The committee will be in order. Good morning and welcome to the Joint Legislative Committee on Government Oversight. Apologize for my delay. I could not get off the farm this morning. Customers kept coming just as I was driving out of the driveway. We have a intense agenda or not, depending upon what we do with the items in front of us. But before we get into it, we'll have committee introductions today. I'll start on my left with Senator Tipping.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Mike Tipping, representing District 8 in Northern and Central Penobscot County.
Good morning, Michael Lemlin. I represent House District 53, Chelsea, Randolph, Pittston, and Dresden.
Morning, Representative Chad Perkins from District 31. I live in Dover, Foxcroft, and I represent Southeast Piscataquis County.
Good morning, folks. My name's Brad Fair, and I represent Senate District 3, which is 15 towns in Somerset, Penobscot, and Kennebec counties.
Good morning. I'm Adam Lee. I represent House District 89, which is downtown and New Auburn.
Good morning. I'm Senator Jeff Timberlake. I represent Senate District 17 in Androscoggin and Kennebec counties.
We have a few members joining us remotely today. Senator Guerin. You are on mute, Senator.
Sorry about that. I am Senator Stacey Guerin, representing all of Piscataquis County and part of Penobscot County in Senate District 4.
Senator Dusan.
Good morning. I'm Senator Jill Dusan. I represent Senate District 27, which is part of Portland and part of Westbrook.
Madam Chair.
Good morning. I'm Anne Marie Mastracchio. I represent House District 142, which is part of the city of Sanford and the village of Springdale, and it's my honor to serve as the co-chair of this committee with Senator Hickman. Thank you, Representative. I'm Craig Hickman. I represent Senate District 14, 12 municipalities in southern Kennebec County, including my beloved hometown of Winthrop. We also have with us today our clerk, Jennifer Greiner, and our director, Peter Schleck. We have in our binders, and were provided in advance of this meeting, draft copies of the summaries of our two previous meetings, first held on May 20th, 2026, and June 17th, 2026, respectively. If there are no comments or edits, those summaries will both be considered final. And seeing no objection, it is so. We now turn to this committee's annual tax expenditure categorization and scheduling process as required by statute. The Opega tax team also has an update on the tax expenditure evaluation of the deductions for interest and dividends on Maine, state, and local securities, and a proposal to reclassify that item to the no review category during this annual process. These matters will require committee motions and votes, and Opega senior analysts Jen Henderson and Carrie Holjera will join us now to walk us through all of this. Please step forward. Good morning. Thank you both for being here today and for your work in advance. And you may proceed whenever you are ready.
Thank you very much, Senator. Good morning, Senator Hickman, Representative Mastracchio, and members of the Government Oversight Committee. As Senator Hickman said, this is a process that the Government Oversight Committee undertakes annually in consultation with the Taxation Committee. And it is required by statute Title 3, Section 998, and it's specifically for the tax expenditure reviews. And the purpose of the process really is to make adjustments as needed in two areas. One is the review category assignments, and the second is the full evaluation schedule. And this annual updating process aims to update those things to incorporate any changes to tax expenditures that occurred in the most recent legislative session. So to incorporate any newly enacted tax expenditures, to make any changes to reflect any that were repealed or amended in the most recent session. Process-wise, I'll note that for the last couple of sessions, the consultation that this committee has done with the tax committee has happened via a letter that the GOC has sent to tax noting the changes that this committee voted in and soliciting taxes input. And tax may or may not be in a position to send input at that time. So if the tax committee later sends input, I just want to note that this committee can always decide to take up that input and make further decisions at a later date. This isn't a decision that once it's made is unalterable. The committee can always take up the categorization or the schedule and make further changes, either in response to tax or in response to member interest here at any time.
Thank
So if it's acceptable, I would propose that we start with the proposed adjustments document, which is behind the purple sheet in tab 2 of your books. It's this little small table. And this document basically captures the adjustments that we are proposing to the categorizations at this moment. And in the final column there, the furthest one over, you can see in bold is the actual staff proposal for each row. And just as background, the committee may recall that all of Maine's tax expenditures are put into one of two categories for the purposes of the tax expenditure review process. Those are category A in statute, which is a full evaluation, or category C, which is no review. And apologies if A and C with no B is confusing. Some of you may recall there used to be a B, but that no longer exists. So now we have just full evaluation or no review. And if the chair will permit, I'd suggest that we start looking at the proposed changes for the no review category, as they're a little more straightforward.
you. Please and thank you.
All right. So in the no review category this year, we are recommending adding 3 tax expenditures that were newly enacted. Those are the pass-through entity tax credit, the cannabis sales and transfer exemption from cannabis excise tax, and the income subtraction modification for certain tribal member compensation. And in all 3 of these cases, we're recommending that they go in the no review category because that is where other tax expenditures that are similar in nature have been categorized to date. So we're recommending putting them with other like tax expenditures. And I can walk through each of them if you'd like.
I would like for you to, but before you do that, Ms. Henderson, Representative Stover has joined us. Could you please introduce yourself?
Good morning, and thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Holly Stover. I represent House District 48, including the 6 beautiful coastal towns of Boothbay Harbor, Southport, Edgecombe, Westport Island, and South Bristol.
Thank you. Good morning. You may proceed.
Thank you. So for the pass-through entity tax credit, our understanding is that this credit, along with the pass-through entity tax that was created for tax years beginning in January of 2026, was created in response to federal tax policy related to the SALT cap. And tax expenditures that are mostly about conformity or response to federal tax policy have typically been scheduled or categorized, I should say, for no review. And so we're recommending that for this one as well.
Are there any questions from the committee about that one? And just for the public, could you just tell me what SALT means?
Yes, Senator, it is the state and local tax cap.
Chair recognizes Senator Tippett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On that one in particular, I realize there's no category B anymore here, but the decision made in the tax committee on that, we chose kind of an arbitrary figure on what percentage to allow for that credit. You know, some places have done 90, some have done 95. I think ours was, I don't know if you have it in front of you, but
90.
yeah. And so, and there's been other proposals, 80, things like that. So I wonder if there's some measure there of if we hit the number right, that might be appropriate, and maybe that's something better handled by the tax committee. But I just wonder if there is any review that might be appropriate of that, because it was, a conversation where this hasn't been done before. It's a change in federal tax law. We want to maximize the state return and the benefit to these companies as well. And there may be some tweaking that is necessary there.
Thank you, Senator.
So I think you're correct, Senator, that we don't really have a category for anything like that anymore. And at the same time, as you may recall, this committee doesn't really need a category to ask OPEGA to look into something. And so, for example, we did the limited special project about the student loan tax credit that was not a full evaluation that was scheduled according to the whole tax expenditure review process, but was answering some specific questions that members had. And so even if the committee decides to categorize that expenditure for no review, the committee can still ask OPEGA to perform some limited work, bring some information to this committee or to tax at any point that would be helpful.
Senator.
I appreciate that. And yeah, I think enough just to put it on our radar here.
Thank you. So, Senator, would you be proposing, when we have a motion, that this be in the no review category with the caveat that it may be reviewed at some point in the future by either the taxation committee or this committee or both?
Yeah, where that's the recommendation from OPEGA, I think that's appropriate.
Thank you. And yep, Chair recognizes Representative Strachio.
Thank you, Senator. So basically, though, I guess I've looked at, been doing this for a while. And one of the things that I've always assumed is that there's a kind of a constant look at this. And so if a no review category, and I had a couple questions when we go further about one particular item in the no review category, when it's a huge amount of money in my mind, that it's something that we always should go back to. So I guess I just assumed, and maybe I shouldn't assume, that that's something that the tax committee would always be aware of. But maybe we do need to state it for the record that there's a point at which, just because they're in the no review doesn't mean they will always be no review. They are no review right now. Basically, that's it, correct?
I'm not aware of anything in statute that would require them to sort of be considered again for review, other than as part of this annual process.
But we used to have nothing that was reviewed instead. I mean, so I feel like we're really ahead of the game.
Right.
I just don't want to miss out on some of these things, and the ones that I'm talking about are, and granted, a lot of little amounts add up to a big amount. Mm-hmm. But I could go through those no review and get most of them. There is at least one or two that I would say, maybe we do need to put them in there for, maybe it's not a review, but it's a look back, like a check-in. And maybe that's what Senator Tipping was talking about, is that a check-in on something that's new. Maybe we say in a year, these that were moving into no review, come back to us and tell us, was that a good spot for them, or whatever time period you need to have so that we can assess them appropriately.
We do, we staff, just as a matter of course, keep an eye every 2 years. Maine Revenue Services releases their Maine State Tax Expenditure Report, where they include for all of the tax expenditures their projected revenue loss associated with each one for the next couple of years. Mm-hmm. And we take that information, we add it to the spreadsheets for you, and we also take note of any that have had a substantial change, particularly a substantial increase in the expected revenue loss. And we do bring those to the committee's attention, typically. Also, if there are any that seem to be having changes in the nature of the credit. So it might not have been newly enacted or repealed, but something about its nature might have changed enough that we think this committee might just want to take another look at whether it should be reviewed or not. We do bring those to this committee's attention. We don't have any of the cost ones this year because it's not a Red Book year.
Yep.
Next spring, the new Red Book will come out and we'll have some of those again. So we do that kind of looking. I don't know if that's what you're.
Thank you. That makes me feel better. I feel like you all are good. You are the stable people. The legislature is not. I mean, with the transition, I always am afraid of things getting lost. So that makes me feel better.
Thank you, Representative. Any other thoughts on this particular category? This particular item in this category, I should say. Seeing none, you may proceed.
All right, the second one that we were recommending be added to the no review category was the cannabis sales and transfers exemption from cannabis excise tax. And our best understanding of this one is that it appears to exempt from tax the inputs to a product because that product will be taxed at a later time, somewhat like we have tax expenditures already on the books that do that for manufacturing inputs. And those types of exemptions for inputs to a product that is later sold have typically been put in the no review category. So that's why we're recommending that for this one as well.
Any questions? Seeing none.
And finally, the income subtraction modification for certain tribal member compensation. We're recommending for no review, consistent with other modifications to income tax that exist for tribal members and that are currently in the no review category.
Any questions about that one? Seeing none.
So those are all the recommendations we have for adding newly enacted items to the no review category. We also, as you can see here at the top, do have recommended changes for two items that had previously been categorized for a full evaluation, and we're now proposing be moved into the no review category. And if you're ready to discuss that, Carrie will walk you through that.
Thank you, we are.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So there are two related tax deductions that we're recommending be reclassified to this no evaluation category, and these are the deductions for interest and dividends on Maine, state, and local securities. One of the deductions is for individual taxpayers and one is for corporate taxpayers. So that's the distinction. They're really doing the same thing. These were originally classified for full evaluation, and we did begin and get quite a ways into doing work on these, and we ended up producing for you an information brief. And this is behind the orange tab in the back of tab 2. And this information brief gives information on what we learned about overall the taxation of state and local securities in Maine, and why we think it suggests that these two deductions are part of a larger Maine tax policy of generally exempting the interest and dividends on these types of state and local securities from taxation. So we think they fit into this larger whole, this larger policy overall. And if you turn to our proposed reclassification document, which is behind the blue paper, sorry, I'm pointing you in lots of directions, but hopefully this is a more succinct proposal of what we're recommending here. You'll see that we concluded that evaluating the effects of this small piece of the overall network of Maine state and local bonds in isolation would be inconsistent with how we're treating these other tax exemptions for state and local bonds. Additionally, we think that isolating the effects of these particular exemptions would be challenging and more resource intensive than is warranted based on their estimated fiscal impacts and the small number of taxpayers affected. So those are our recommendations. The addition of those 3 new tax expenditures to the no review category, as Jen explained, and the reclassification of these 2 bond deduction expenditures to the no review category. And we're happy to answer any questions you might have before you make any moves that you might move.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from the committee about these particular reclassification recommendations? Representative Strachey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I just was going through the no reviews, and one that I think has probably confused me in the past. I know we've had bills about this. It's the business purchases of automobiles for the purpose of rentals for less than 1 year. And the reason I picked this one out was because it was $104 million. I mean, it's the amount of money. And I guess I just am trying to understand how this works and how, if there's no review, you verify, so it says it's a sale to a person engaged in the business of renting automobiles. Let's just use enterprise rentals. Of automobiles, integral parts of automobiles or accessories to automobiles. Could be even a dealership that rents automobiles, or is it just if you're just a rental, car rental agency? That wasn't clear. And for a period of less than 1 year, and how, if we're not going to review it, how is that verified? And does that mean, is it sequential? So they rent it for a year and then they get it for another year? And then when is the sales tax actually paid on the car? When it's sold to the person, when they finally get rid of it in their fleet? Can you just explain? Because it seems like a lot of money to not have any review at all. And maybe somebody from the tax committee knows more about it than I do. I'm not on that committee, but I think that if I was a layperson, seeing that there's that much money, that I pay sales tax on my car. So you tell me why a rental company doesn't, and how do we verify that they're following all the rules?
I am sorry, Representative, I do not have the answers to all of those
Okay.
questions right now. For a lot of these exemptions, all that's in statute really is that blurb.
Right.
And so to find out more, we would really need to do at least a small limited review. We would need to be reaching out to the agency for information and gathering some further information for you. And we can certainly do
Yeah,
that.
and I'm sorry that I didn't get that to you ahead of time because I would have asked, but I would be interested in just understanding that a little bit better. I'm sure there's a reason that it's the way that it is. As a legislator, I just am I just feel like we're an oversight, and that's a lot of money to just put it in no review. I didn't ever, I mean, I looked at it, but some of the times this stuff blurs together. I would hate to be on the tax committee. But I would really be interested in the future. I'm going to still vote for this the way that it is, but I would really appreciate, you don't have to share it with the rest of the committee unless you think it's of interest or the rest of the committee wants to hear about it, but I would just really be interested in knowing what how this works.
Thank you, Representative Chair. We'll turn to Senator Tipping from the Taxation Committee to see what he has to say.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I am trying to bring back all my memories of this one from our committee conversations. So part of the conversation about this was how we handle the tax stream, and whether we are taxing the initial purchase or then taxing the rentals themselves. And the idea there was to prevent double taxation. You may remember a spirited debate about golf carts, and you may have received emails about that and how we tax those, whether it was the initial purchase or the use. And I believe the idea with this one and with others like that is to eventually align them all in the same way. There was a lot of references to trying to swim upstream against the tax stream, and warnings about that.
Yeah.
You may proceed.
So you're saying that people are aware, so at some point, so when they get the cars and they don't have to pay sales tax on them, they are then taxed at a different rate for a rental rate.
So the
I'm just,
Could,
and that's
Mr.
supposed to
Chair.
replace the sales?
The
I'm
idea
just-
is that people are taxed when they rent the cars.
Okay.
So there is a spirited debate about that. I don't feel the need to
All right.
weigh into the philosophical aspects of it here. But this was one that there were a couple of different legislative proposals about this term.
So here's my question.
You may proceed.
That in that case, it may be no review, but it still might be of interest to see how that all plays together. Do you know what I mean? It's like one of those, it's like you saying that we get the money some way, but it kind of like, to me, sometimes sees like that game where you don't know which button the cup is over. And I'm just, is that what they call it, a shell game? Anyway, I am saying that as far as if we are truly going to be an oversight committee, it might be informational for future legislators who are trying to make those decisions. And it may be something that this committee could undertake. And I'm not saying that we need to do it now, but just putting it on the radar that, like many other things, taxation is not simple. And that's a lot of money. So if you showed me that 104 was replaced somewhere else, because what I don't want is for the taxpayers, the people who live in the state, to be paying sales tax on their cars. And there's a way for other companies to not be paying their fair share. That's all I'm saying.
I mean, if I could,
You
Mr.
may
Chair,
proceed.
I certainly think that's appropriate to have that information available and have that review be done. I'd say on this one, there's also a question that was raised around if this is fair to rideshare companies where people are renting out their own vehicles potentially, and they're already paying sales tax on that, and then these companies don't have to. Like, there were a lot of conversations about what's fair and what's appropriate there. So I think it's a conversation that would continue. I don't know what degree of OPEGA review would be helpful for that, but I think you're right that it would be very helpful to have that information for future legislatures.
It would seem to me that we would want to know if we're trying to avoid quote unquote double taxation. If over the life that a rental agency owns a vehicle and rents it to a consumer, are we recovering the cost of what would have been the sales tax on the purchase of the vehicle with what people are actually paying in sales tax when they rent the vehicle for the life of the law that says that this deduction only happens for this amount of time on an automobile that is rented for less than a year. So I do think that there are a lot of questions to be had around whether or not this is good tax policy. Are we actually making up for the fact that we're not charging the sales tax to the rental owner? Chair recognizes Senator Timberlake.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And as it's been said, this was been debated pretty heavily over the last couple of years of whether, and I'm no longer in this business anymore, so now I can speak freely about it. But I had the rental business and we charged a lot of tax on equipment that we bought. But you got to remember that also when we brought a piece of equipment in and we charged the tax during the rental, that sooner or later, every rental company keeps it for about a year and then sells it. And the state also gets the sales tax money at that point in time when they sell it. Now, it may not have been the full retail price, but they have made money on that piece of equipment over the period of time because the tax that comes in on the rentals exceeds what the discount was from the retail price of when they sold it, because they're still selling it at a pretty decent price, and the state then gets its sales tax.
Thank you for that. So I think if I'm hearing you correctly, the state isn't really losing money, it's just getting it later.
It just, instead of getting it, tax me now or tax me later, you could tax a piece of equipment when you buy it, pay the sales tax then, but you shouldn't then tax the consumer again on it when you're renting it, because you already paid the tax on it. So we're charging him tax all the time that he's renting it because the tax hasn't been paid yet. And then when you make the final sale on the item, the state now gets the rest of its tax money. So it's a pay me upfront or pay me later. I think the better system is the guy shouldn't pay tax on it when he buys the equipment in. If he's going to put it in his rental, he pays tax on it when he sells it. And the state makes more money, in my opinion, that way.
It sounds like the state would make more money in that scenario. But is that necessarily also good tax policy? But that's not for this committee to decide.
Anyway,
Less
sorry I
taxes, I'm
brought
all
that.
in.
It really just depends on when we get information about these expenditures, what they look like. And it would be interesting for the taxation committee to request that information when they do their own internal reviews of the policies that they pass. Chair recognizes Representative Perkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and maybe Senator Timberlake can answer this for me because he was in the rental business, but do we not have rental cars that were purchased out of state that we're collecting sales tax on when we do the rental? So it would seem like by foregoing that sales tax at the purchase point and then getting the tax later on the rental point, we're actually getting more money because we're now collecting tax on vehicles that actually weren't purchased in the state, which we never would have gotten taxed on. Am I incorrect there, Senator, or am I correct there?
In my opinion, you're saying it right. That's my opinion, and we know what that's worth.
Any other thoughts? Questions? Senator Tipping.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I think, I don't want to get into the debate on this particular one or why or why not. And there's people on different sides of it. But I do think it's important and something that the taxation committee has tried to move towards is having all these taxes handled in the same way so that there's an understanding and an expectation of how these will be done.
Thank you, Senator. Any other thoughts on this item that our co-chair has brought to our attention? Seeing none. So do we want to talk about the schedule?
Yes, Senator, that is behind the green, I believe. Is that right?
I believe
It is
so.
the
Yes.
proposed.
I'm asking the question because the motion can be on either the categorization or the schedule, or it could be a joint motion. So I figure the committee can just hear from our analysts on all of it before we decide which motion we're going to take in the approach. So please proceed.
Thank you. So this one says proposed tax expenditure review schedule for category A, full evaluations at the top.
Yes.
And in this one, you'll see that the two deductions for interest and dividends that we're proposing be moved to no review have strike through font there to show that we're proposing they be taken off the schedule for full evaluation.
Yep.
So what this schedule really does is just take those that are categorized for full evaluation and plot them out in a tentative order of priority as to when they would be reviewed in the future.
Any questions from the committee on that? It seems very straightforward. Any questions overall about this annual review process that this committee is ordered to do by statute? Seeing none. At this time, then, the chair would entertain a motion to accept the categorization changes as recommended and accept the proposed schedule changes as recommended by our analysts regarding this review. Chair
So
recognizes Representative Strachio.
I'll make that motion.
It's been moved by Representative Strachio to accept these recommendations, both in the categorization and the schedule. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been seconded by Representative Stover. Is there any discussion of this motion from the committee? Chair recognizes Senator Tippett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think the motion is fine and the recommendations are good here. I think it'd be appropriate. Perhaps this is happening anyway, to send some communication to the tax committee chairs of our decision, make sure it fits with their expectations, and we may revisit it if they have substantial objections.
That is a part of the process, as we do normally. So thank you very much, Senator Tipping, for any other discussion of the motion to accept and accept? Seeing none. All those in favor, please indicate in the usual manner. It is unanimous of those present and voting. Absent members will have until Friday at noon to cast their vote in absentia. Thank you. Thank you very much. Next, we will see in our binders at tab 3 that we have a request from our committee colleague, Senator Timberlake, and the chair would invite him to step over to the table and present it to us, after which we may ask any questions we like of the good senator from Andrews Garden. Senator Timberlake, thank you for joining us with your request. You may proceed whenever you are ready. Turn your mic.
Yes, and thank you, Mr. Chair, and members of the committee. As you know, we've had a long history with the Department of Health and Human Services and what we're doing. And Braxton Smith came up. I sent a letter to DHHS asking, said now the case has been, all three people have now admitted guilt, and two of them had been, their penalties have been brought down. Asked if they could give me what information they had about involvement, what DHHS's involvement was. And I got a letter back from DHHS. The standard operating procedure is there's still one person that hasn't had her what the judge rigged down how long, what the sentence is going to be. So they wouldn't do it. The usual, we're going to hide behind the iron curtain. Most of you know that I've sat here over the years fighting this, and I find it very important that we get to the problem with this. And there's a friend of mine that we're all familiar with, Bill Diamond, and I'm probably going to get hollered at, but I'm going to play you what he had to say about Braxton Smith. It's about 11 seconds.
Somebody failed Braxton, and we need to find out. Let me change it. We're going to find out who it was, because he was battered and tortured and all the things that happened to him for over a year at least, probably longer. And nobody spoke up.
That's Senator Bill Diamond, who's passed away, God rest his soul. But we don't know, folks, and we have gone through 4 of these cases so far, and we've yet to figure out exactly what's happening, why we're still one of the worst states in the nation. And I think we need to do the full investigation on this. I think that if we allow Opega to do this through when we come into the next legislative session, the people that are appointed to this committee, this work is being done in advance. And the only reason you guys are going to be stuck with me for 2 more years is because the Department of Health and Human Services has been a priority to some of us who've sat around this horseshoe. And I know I'm not the only one here who has the same opinion. There's a gentleman sitting in front of me. We've fought this battle together for a long time. And I want to get to the bottom, and I just want to know what the department had for involvement in this case, because this kid was punished for a long time. He weighed about 62 pounds when he finally died. And that's my case, and that's why I would love to see this case move forward and Opega do an investigation into it.
So Senator, thank you for bringing this to our attention again. Your letter dated in June says that you were not requesting a formal investigation at that time. So you were saying today that you would like for this committee to consider
yes,
directing Opega to
my letter also said I may ask for one in the future.
I do see that. Thank you. Are there any questions for the Senator? Chair recognizes Representative Stover.
I would ask if, when that sentencing date, has the sentencing hearing date been set?
I don't know today, and I don't know if they have sentenced it as of today, because this was at June 10th. The grandmother had admitted at that point in time that she was guilty and that they just had to set a sentencing date, and they hadn't done it.
And one
Sure.
follow-up.
You may proceed.
I've spent my entire adult career in child abuse and child welfare in various forms, including in my own community. So I would just say words really matter, and I wouldn't say that he was punished. He was abused. He was tortured and abused. And you said it's not punishment. Punishment's taking away the TV for the night. And I just think we need to use the language because does matter to me. Thank you.
Chair, you may proceed.
And my response to that is, I don't disagree with anything you say. I would have used much stronger words. I'm not using farm language because I could go into a lot what I think happened to him, but I'm not going to go there. But I agree with you. Anyway.
And
move on.
Senator, the other thing I would say is when we talk about these cases, I've dealt with some horrible cases. I always wonder what happened when they went to school, that nobody noticed, that nobody said anything and nobody did anything. And I do believe that truancy statutes should be strengthened, that when children miss large periods of school for unknown absences and unknown sicknesses, that bad things can be happening to them. So that's just my commentary on future direction for the future legislature to look at those education statutes as well.
You and I are on the same page on that too.
Chair recognizes Senator Farron.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator Timberlake, for, again, keeping this in the forefront. And this committee has talked a lot about these cases. And the one that really rings home with this one is all 3 adults involved in this case have been found guilty. We're not talking about, so for sentencing for the 3rd one is the reason that the department doesn't come here and answer questions or answer your questions is just another stall tactic, in my opinion. Because there's just some basic things that I think we want to know, right? Was Braxton known, to the department? Was there reporting with folks? Things that we want to find out. So for them to continue to hide behind confidentiality when a child is dead, 3 adults have been found guilty, 2 of them already sentenced, and we can't get simple answers to questions is damn frustrating. So anything I can do, and I hope this committee can do, to save children, we need to continue the work.
The chair recognizes Representative.
That was my question.
It's really okay, Senator. This is not a public hearing. The chair recognizes Representative Lee.
As a point of information, I'm looking on a news site and it's indicating that both the mother and the grandmother have already been sentenced, but the father is not scheduled to be sentenced until September.
Thank you.
I have them backwards, that's all.
Thank you for that clarity. Senator Tipping, can I see you? You may proceed.
No, but you somehow anticipated it. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I really appreciate you bringing this forward. And I was wondering, do you think there are specific elements of this case and looking into it that would be helpful for us as a committee that would, bring some light to things? And or do you think we need maybe just a look back? We did obviously a lot of work on a lot of cases. We identified a number of systemic issues. We made recommendations and a report. I wonder if it'd be appropriate to see which of those recommendations have been taken into account, what changes have been made in a broader way than just one case.
And
Thank you, Senator.
permission.
You may proceed.
And Senator, I thank you because you bring up a great point. I think it's important to go back and look at this case because I think it has multiple things in it. How did this allow to happen? How did this child get beaten and nobody ever recognized it and nobody ever come in to stop it? But I see that we look back at what we looked at in the other 4 cases. Was there any differences? But more importantly, we're about to, no matter, we're going to have a new governor in the next election, which means we're going to have a conversation about who's going to run DHHS in the future, no matter which side of the aisle wins or where it is. But we're going to have a chance to have that conversation all over again. And I think all the information that we can provide now to the next head of the department, that we can figure out what went wrong, how this was allowed to happen. Because all of us sitting around this table, I mean, I got to believe everybody's getting some of the same emails. This is continuing to go on today. I mean, so I think what you're saying is exactly right, Senator. We need to take what we've looked at. Has anything been implemented? Has it changed? What do we see in this case of the same things? And what do we do in the future for the next commissioner that's going to take over to make a difference so that we protect the children of the state of Maine?
Any other questions? Chair recognizes Representative Lemon.
Thank you, Senator. I didn't read into this that much. Was DHHS already involved in any way with this child's life? Was he on main care, etc.?
The question that was asked that I had sent in a question direct to the commissioner was what involvement they have, and they won't answer the question. And they haven't answered the question at this time. I can only tell of assumptions that we had, but I don't have anything from the department that says that. And what I'm asking today is I want to know what involvement they had prior to. If they had none, then there's nothing here, right? But if they had something, if they had been involved, then the belief is they had been involved, okay? But I can't say to prove it because I got nothing to prove it today because they won't answer the questions. They're hiding behind that.
Yeah, the reason I asked, Senator, is because I don't understand how any of these cases happen. Just in my own life, somebody comes to our house all the time. Matter of fact, 3 different people come to my house once a month to evaluate our home, to evaluate my son's life. And there's nothing to see, but they still come and they still do a full evaluation. But my son's treated like a king. So my point is, how does DHHS miss any of this when, if the person is involved, and other cases that we've had here, there is multiple people involved. How do they all miss it? How do they all not react? This is why I'm so concerned. Because I just can't see how any of this slips on the cracks. I don't get it. So I'm very curious. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Chair recognizes Representative Perkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you so much, Senator, for, again, bringing up these issues. I think I'm quite sure I said this before in this committee, is sometimes we find things when we're looking at something else. And the only point I would disagree with you is when you said that if DHS didn't know anything about it, there's nothing there. And I would disagree by saying that if they didn't know about it, there's something there because we would want to know why.
Fair enough.
Especially in the condition that the child was in at the time that he was murdered. And this goes back to what Representative Stover said and what Representative Lemlin said. I mean, there's got to be somebody that had eyes on this child at some point in their life where this, if there was DHS involvement, why wasn't this handled? If it wasn't handled inappropriately, why wasn't it? And if there wasn't any involvement, why wasn't there? And I don't think we're going to have any of those answers, regardless of whatever looks we've had into other cases. I don't think we're going to have those answers because every case is unique. We're not going to get those answers unless we look into this. And for that reason, Mr. Chairman, I fully support Senator Timberlake's request that we perform a formal investigation. And if it's appropriate, I'd like to make a motion to do so.
Any motion is appropriate anytime. The chair is going to invite Director of OPEGA forward just to get his input on this matter, given that I know that our director is looking at all of these cases in totality as he does his work. The chair recognizes Senator Tipping. You may come forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We've heard that perhaps the final sentencing will be next month in September. Do you think there's any value in waiting a few weeks, seeing if they might answer any of these questions before involving OPEGA? Just wanted to get that on the record.
Hell no. I think it's time that whether they give me their version of the answer or we get OPEGA's version of the answer, maybe two different versions of an answer. And I won't lie. I don't know as I have a lot of trust that they would tell me what I really want to know anyway. I think they would create a gray area that I want to dig all the way to the bottom. Folks, I almost got tears in my eyes now because I have been dealing with this for so long and we can't seem to get to the bottom of it. And there's more happening around us. We've had 3 more since this one in the state of Maine. Children die that have had some involvement with the department.
Chair recognizes Senator Farron.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Timberlake, I know we have a lot of focus on the Office of Child Protective Services and DHHS, but one of the looming questions, the backbone of this is, what did they have involvement in this case before this child was killed? And we don't know that. But if the answer is no, should we also be looking, I mean, you and I have had a lot of conversations. This committee has focused strictly on DHHS, but there are other mandated reporters. What's the word? Mandated reporters. And how did that all slip? So maybe looking beyond just DHHS, but the reporting requirements as well to see how this child fell through the cracks. Is that something that you support as well, or?
Oh, of course. I think that's one of the most important things. I mean, we've all gotten message setting in this room about the mandated reporter of them reporting to DHHS. And I'd like to know if any mandated reporters had reported, what did DHHS follow up on and how did they follow up on it and what happened when that report was filed?
Thank you. Chair recognizes Representative Lee.
I'm gonna miss this. Who has provided the sentencing as an excuse for not providing answers, and did they give a reason why that acts as an excuse?
The commissioner, I sent a letter along when I sent the one to the committee. I also sent a letter at the same time to the commissioner asking her if she'd respond back to me. She responded back saying that she can't give me any information until after the sentencing because of confidential information, which is the usual thing they hide behind.
Thank you. If there are no other questions for Senator Timberlake from this side of the horseshoe, I'll invite Senator Timberlake to come back and sit with us because it looks like there will be a motion coming soon. But before we do that, I'd like to hear from Director Schleck about what his opinion of this discussion is outside of a motion that we might make.
Thank you, Senator Hickman, Representative Mastracchio, distinguished members. It's always a privilege to be with you again. My thanks to Senator Timberlake for his leadership on this issue. I wanted to touch on a couple of things. Full disclosure, I used to be the clerk of court in Bangor, and so I don't have inside information, but I will have the ability to find out when the sentencing is docketed, and I can confer with the chairs. The genesis of the provision about sentencings comes from statute, Title 22, Section 4008-A. And it's the commissioner shall make public disclosure of the findings or information in situations where child abuse or neglect results in a child fatality or near fatality, with the exceptions of circumstances as determined with the advice of the Attorney General or appropriate district attorney in which disclosure of child protective information would jeopardize a criminal investigation or proceeding. That has been interpreted to run through sentencing at the trial level, not appeals to the law court. That is what worked in the prior 4 cases that OPEGA reviewed. The reason I would gently suggest to the committee there could be an opportunity to get the department's memo. Senator Timberlake is already ahead of the game because he sent out the letters early saying, I'm going to want that memo. And so there won't be a situation, there should not be a situation when the sentencing comes. That memo, respectfully, should literally be ready to hand to us after the sentencing. So what I'm suggesting is, and again, the September meeting for us is usually the 3rd week in September. So if I could do a little checking in planning our September meeting, the idea would be we would get the memo. We could even have the memo. You could even invite someone in. And again, they can then say, but in those memos, this goes back to Kendall Chick. This goes back to Marissa Kennedy. There's very detailed descriptions. And I very much appreciate that the committee will want us to audit that in some way at some point. But I will say in the times that we audited them, if you will, in the 4 prior cases, knowing that we were out there or not going to come and look at it, those memos were pretty much consistent with what we saw happening. It's also the case that it could give you insight into the homeschooling angle. When I say that, I mean no disrespect to homeschooling. What I mean is, if there was no lever by which someone was having eyes on the child, that could be part of the conversation. It might generate some of the questions that the committee will want to then make sure that they task us with if that's where we get. So I'm always asking Senator Timberlake for patience, and he is a very patient man. But I would suggest there's an opportunity here that Senator Timberlake has done the groundwork to ensure that the department knows that when that sentencing happens in September, that memo should be handed to us. Then you will get a pretty detailed public accounting of at least, yes, we had involvement, no, we did not, yes, we did, and here's how. It's pretty detailed. The other thing I just wanted to introduce into the conversation, because I have to introduce it at some point, as all of these legislators here before me know, enacted recently was the Office of the Child Advocate bill. And there is a process by which the governor, by October 1st, designates at least an interim child advocate. My understanding is Ms. Alberry and the Child Welfare Ombudsman folks at some point in the process transfer over, that she may or may not wind up being. I'm not the governor. I'm not getting ahead of anything. But to the extent she is empowered to do case-specific reviews under that statute, whether assigned or requested or of her own initiative. It's very interesting in the language. I just wonder whether the committee might want to sort of hear from them as well about where that stands and is there any plan to do something in this situation. One of the things that has occurred in the past, and I can appreciate why it would be a source of some frustration. I think the chairs and many of the members of this committee know how much we've gone through with the litigation at the law court to try to get an understanding of what's going on. One of the things that's happening is the way it used to work under the ombudsman process. The ombudsman would come here and say, well, I have some things I'd like to say to you about this, but I really can't. I would welcome the opportunity for the child advocate folks under the new law to be able to explain because I have found a way in these cases using this memo to force a public accounting of this information. Is it going to still be the same that the child advocate can't come before you and tell you things that happened based on their own review? Because I can understand why that's another source of frustration. I put all that in place, but at the bottom, I come back to it's still worth waiting for the memo if you it would give the committee an opportunity to engage as early as our next meeting.
Chair recognizes Representative Straka, and thank you, Director, for answering my question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The concern that I have,
Yeah.
Director, is that it says the sentencing is scheduled for late September. We
Yeah.
have a meeting the third Wednesday.
16.
What I wouldn't want to do is come in here on the 16th and the sentencing is that Friday or the next Monday or whatever.
Understood.
So maybe, I mean, I would like to move forward on this. So but I do think that we need to wait for that because that could inform how we, the kinds of what we set up that we actually want you to look at, the scope. And so maybe, Mr. Chair, we take a look at being a little more fluid in how we schedule our next meeting, if we can find out when that sentencing date actually is, because all that's on there now is late September.
It may already be known, and I can find that out and
Okay.
confer with the chairs.
Okay, Senator Timberlake.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think, and I respect the director's request, but I've sat in this building now for 16 years. Time only asks for more time. I believe that I would like to move forward, and I don't believe that between now and September 16th or September 25th that we'll find anything, and we're still going to get the memo when it comes out. But I think in the past 4 cases, we've gone beyond the memo to get information, to find out the rest of the information, because not everything is in that memo. And I think there's more to this story than what's going to come out in just the memo. So I don't have any great expectation that we would vote on this today and we'd have a reply by the next meeting. This is the start of a long process. And the one thing I don't want to do is put off for another month and then another month to us to get here. I would just like to set the wheels of time in motion and that we start ticking the clock to get to where we got to be. The memo is going to come out, and I think when the memo comes out, I'm probably going to want more information. And I just think if we have the wheels in motion, then the sooner we can get to a solution. And so I hope we continue forward. And I don't expect anything's going to happen until the memo comes out, but we should move the process forward.
Oh, thank you, Senator. I'm gonna go to Senator Guerin, followed by Representative Stover, followed by Representative Lemley. Senator Guerin?
Trying to get my camera on there. Sorry about that. Okay, so I'm wondering if a good motion would be that we would request the review pending the sentencing, that the review would begin as soon as the sentencing is established in September, and that the review would include mandatory reporters so we can get a handle on that too. I used to do homeschool reviews myself as a certified teacher, and I certainly would have reported a child that was that thin and just all of the warning signs. So I'm wondering what type of evaluation they were using, or if they were breaking the law and not having reviews. So I would like to make that a motion.
So Senator Guerin, if I'm understanding you correctly, you would like the committee to direct OPEGA to do what exactly in your motion?
It would be the request of Senator Timberlake, and that request would be activated by the sentencing of I believe it's the father. Is that who we're waiting for the sentencing for? And that they would also investigate potential other mandatory reporters that may not have done their job there.
I think I understand the motion. The committee has a motion in front of it. Is anyone willing to second the motion at this time? The chair will recognize Representative Stover, who has a comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I understand what Senator Guerin is mentioning. I served on the homicide review panel for domestic violence, and there were two cases specifically that I recall within the past 15 years where there was a death, homicide in the home, where children were present, where homeschooling was provided to in both cases. And we concluded and we do get to read volumes of material, and there had been, anyway, in both of those cases, there had been involvement, but it ended tragically in the death of a parent. But we attributed that homeschooling does not cause domestic violence. However, homeschooling and the isolation provided by the process had to be recognized as contributing factors. So it encouraged us to I'm not, and I am not saying I'm nothing against homeschooling. I'm saying just look at the factors of how if you don't get up and go to public school or a school every day, that the isolation can be a contributing factor. And the other is that we have the child death and serious injury panel that exists, and I don't recall if we've ever leaned into them. Obviously, they have to go post-sentencing as well, but the volumes of material that are reviewed in those cases and the thoroughness of which they do that work, and it is a multidisciplinary panel. I don't know if OPEG has ever talked with the chair of the child death and serious, you have. So they just do a very thorough, as does the domestic violence homicide review panel. Those are both incredibly detailed pieces of committee work that happen in cases. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Chair recognizes Representative Lemelin.
Thank you, Senator. Director, the last time we met, you said your plate's pretty full. So even if we voted to investigate this, I don't believe that you'd be like off and running, correct?
Well,
If I may.
you may.
Senator, thank you,
Unless we direct you to do
Thank you,
so.
Representative. You are right on target. That is correct. That the committee by 2/3, 8 members can vote to put this at the front of the line as the very next thing. Now, that would line it up with being the very next thing when we finish the 2 items, Juniper Ridge landfill, which is getting finished, and potatoes inspections. I mentioned, of course, with all sensitivity to the Chelsea matter, in my director's report, the Chelsea double homicide involving the foster kinship placement. As a practical matter, and although it is going to be a source of likely frustration for the committee, there are still going to be proceedings in that where we're not going to be able to get going on that one as soon as in this case, this is one where as soon as that sentencing comes down, we could be starting. So it is a decision for the committee. It is absolutely the committee's decision to decide to assign it and then to say, this is your very next thing. And that's how it gets done next. Yes. By
Thank you.
8 votes.
So, Senator, my point is, of course, we're all worried about the September date. I don't believe the director, without our 8 votes, would even begin by October. So I think we're pretty safe in making the motion. That is the point I'm trying to make.
Oh, I understand your point. Thank you, Representative. Representative Mastraki.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I'm just want to clarify in my own mind that if there's a motion today that we want to proceed, we're not going to be skipping steps in the process, which for me includes setting the scope, because I don't know until I see that paper that what I personally would want to see in the scope. So I'll vote for a motion to do that, but that would be pending that scope process, which has always been part of how we frame what that valuation will be.
Yeah, yes, indeed, Representative. And just to put the the nail right on it. Without 8 votes, if you voted today to assign this, it would just go to the end of the work plan and we would work through Medicaid risk assessment. We would work through Chelsea when we can get to, when it's allowed that we look at it, the 16 contracts between DAFs and the state controller and the state auditor, the contract issue within DHHS. So in other words, as in the ordinary course on a first in, first out basis, this would just go to the end of that line and we would get to it. Unless 8 votes, it's the very next thing we do. But yes, we will, but as a practical matter, thank you. I didn't mean to interrupt, Representative.
No, that's all I want to, I get that
Yeah.
part. I want to know
We
then
would have it-
practically, because I think we need to make sure everybody understands the expectations that we're just not going to go willy-nilly and just jump into it.
I do absolutely, consistent with what my presentation earlier, I think as a practical matter, you could vote to assign it today. As a practical matter, we're going to have a conversation with you in light of the memo coming out.
Right.
Because I think the memo is going to say something that's going to get your attention. I don't have any idea what it's going to say, but somehow it's going to have something in there.
I mean, we do have precedent
Yeah.
almost always where we will vote to direct OPEGA to do something and we will re-vote on the scope.
Right.
When the director and
That's
his
right.
staff bring something to us that they believe they can get a handle on in whatever time frame that we believe we would like for them to get a handle on it. The chair recognizes Representative Lee.
I think I'm
Followed by-
saying the same thing that everybody else is saying, but it just seems to me practically, it makes sense to put it in the queue and let the memo dictate both the scope and whether it is a priority item for us when we get the memo.
Representative Perkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, to use Senator Timberlake's words, in order to get the wheels turning, and since Senator Garen's since her motion was more specific than mine was, I'm going to go ahead and second her motion.
So Senator Garen's motion to direct OPEGA to evaluate and investigate this situation and any other ancillary matters, including mandatory reporting, is the motion in front of us, pending a scope of the review, which always happens anyway. So that is the motion. It's been moved by Senator Garen. It's been seconded by Representative Perkins. Senator Timberlake.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess the question that I put in, and I support the motion, by the way. But my question is, how do I get this? I don't need to move it to I wanted to do the 8 votes today also, or hopefully get 8 votes that would move this into the queue. So as soon as he got the memo, he could move, but we would also be meeting in September so that once we would have it, we would change the scope or move it. I just want to make sure those wheels of motions are in place and it just doesn't go to the end of the queue and it just sits there. Because I think this is something that the director has said that this would probably be something, because the memo should be ready to come out immediately after the sentencing and they could grab that and go right to work. It may be short work, it may be long work after they read the memo, but I would just like to get it back to hopefully this committee as soon as we could, or whichever one comes.
So I'm hearing two things from the committee's members so far. One is perhaps amending this motion to include an expedited review, which would take 8 votes, or to approve this and then come back and maybe move it to the top of the queue once we see the memorandum from the agency. I think Representative Lee has put that idea into the atmosphere. The motion in front of us right now is simply to direct OPEGA to do the work. We could take a separate vote on moving it to the front of the line, or it could be included in the motion. It really just depends on what the committee's will is at this point in time.
Continue on the same.
Senator Timberlake.
So I guess, Mr. Chair, I'd ask you if we could maybe have a discussion amongst the members before we moved on of what a straw poll, or whatever you'd like to take it, would be, if they would like to move it right along, or if they want to wait, because my preference is be that I want to move it right along. But I'm willing to have a discussion, and I'd like to hear from the rest of the members if we could, please.
Thank you. Chair recognizes Senator Garen.
I certainly am amenable to modifying my motion and including having it move right along. So if the committee would like to have that motion changed, I am happy to do that.
Well, thank you, Senator, who has made the motion. So the question for the committee isn't necessarily that we vote on the motion. It is, do we believe this is important enough to amend the motion to include an expedited review with 8 votes of the committee? Chair recognizes Senator Tippett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I absolutely support doing this as quickly as possible. I wonder, though, if there's anything we might see from the memo or the initial investigation that might change the scope or focus of the review, where it might be appropriate to then have that conversation and look at it.
Yeah, I think that that is written into the process that we undergo.
So I'm fine with
Anyway.
fast tracking as long as there's that review process.
Representative Perkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Everything, I believe that everything we're looking at is important, but I don't mean to talk poorly about people that are worried about, their potato seeds, because that's obviously extremely important to those farmers and our economy, but we're talking about child's lives here. And we've been dealing with this for so long in so many cases that I would definitely be in support of moving this to the top of the queue. I just think it's time to put this to a close and finally get to the end of this. And
Thank you.
find answers on this.
Thank you. Director, correct me if I'm wrong, but are we further along in the potato review than it being on a list?
The potato review and the Juniper Ridge review are on track to have to be done. The questions I want to confer with the chairs are in their chairs meetings. There's an issue of, as we approach the end of the year, which meetings will be scheduled. We all know there's an election, and then there's times when we don't have a meeting at Christmas, or we do have a meeting at Christmas. And the issue of presenting it to one committee and then having half of the process go into the next committee. There's some things there I want to talk to you about, but we are on track to be moving those to completion such that this will be able to be the next thing if it is the will of the committee.
I just want to verify that.
Yeah, that's right. And again, the fact that all is said and done, this would be the first time where we would get to parachute in at the moment. It's actually literally we're able to do it, not have to wait, which I know has been a source and continues to be a source of concern and frustration. But it is just simply the part about the Attorney General and the Commissioner and the law
saying what it says.
Yeah.
And being interpreted as such.
Right.
Representative Mastracchio.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, because I fully anticipate that this committee in its current iteration will meet through every month until November, which I'm hopeful that we will see the finishing product for Juniper Ridge and the potato, because that stuff is important for the next legislature.
It's very important.
And still have time to begin the process for this, which we know will not be done overnight. So as long as we have the opportunity to scope this post seeing the memo, then I'm in favor of putting it in an expedited review. But I do want those other 2 things to be finished. We cannot just go and say, oh, we're not going to put those aside when they're done.
And if I may, what I meant to say in a better way was nothing about this new assignment would impair that, because it's literally lining up in a way that it's not going to do anything to interfere with what's being finished. And it's actually in a position, if it is your will, this is something that you could jump right onto.
I have one more thing I just want to say. And I appreciate people saying that they think that they're being stonewalled, but honestly, the DHHS, they're following the law now. They're not releasing this because they can't. So I would really appreciate that we just appreciate what their position is. They want this information out there. I know that they will tell us whatever they have, and then we'll have the opportunity to look at it. Maybe you and I can disagree, Senator Timberlake, but saying something in my mind that isn't true, that they're stonewalling you when the law says they can't do it, isn't helpful to what we're all trying to do here. So let's just be what do they say? Intentional with our words.
Chair recognizes Representative Lemon.
Thank you, Senator. The only concern I have is the obvious concern. If we move this to the front of the line, I'm not worried about, I agree with you that the potato and whatever is Juniper Ridge is going to move forward and we're all set. What about the Chelsea thing? if we move this forward, will you be able to work, let's say Chelsea we're all set in 3 weeks. Will you still be able to work on Chelsea at the same time? Because I don't want that to be a back seat, because that's obviously it's my town and it's a big issue.
So, in terms of the order of things that have come in, that in the ordinary course, if nothing got changed, that was going to be the next thing as soon as we were able to do it. So check that box right there. Now, this moves up, if I may, from my
You may.
director's report, a brief discussion of Chelsea. In your binders, you have Judge Dow's bind over decision. It's very graphic.
What tab, Director?
Thank you, Senator. Oh, thank you. It's a sub-tab within the director's report. And so it's
So
usually going to be
five.
keyed to the color of
Five,
the
yeah.
construction paper. But I mentioned it in the following, there's a couple of practical issues there. The bind
Oh, there
over
we go.
decision is a helpful one to our purposes because it has been a ruling under the appropriate standards and law that the juvenile will be tried as an adult. That said, the counsel for the juvenile are taking an appeal of that order to the law court. So that is going to be, as a practical matter, I'm watching very carefully, but there's going to be another time lag where it's going to take some time to docket the appeal, get that heard, because it's one of those, Representative Lee will know well, interlocutory, it's of a nature that it would fundamentally alter the trial process. So, having it in, whether you're having it in adult court or not. So there's an opportunity to challenge the judge's decision, and defense counsel, as they would, pursuing the interests of the defendant, is going to take an appeal. So as a practical matter, the reference, I know 3 weeks was just a hypothetical. Again, what I would suggest is Chelsea is not something we're going to be able to get onto
For a while.
a little while, because there's the appeal of the bind over. Then there's the grand jury potentially indicting, because it's a felony case. It requires an indictment. Then there's the trial proceedings. And then there's the sentencing.
Right.
So,
And
okay.
the law court appeal can take as long as it takes. Their
They take
decision,
what they take.
it's gonna take, this committee is aware that law court decisions can take years.
They take what they take.
And so I think Representative Litherland, what we're really saying here, and of course, this is also my constituency as well. And so it's absolutely crucial we get to the bottom of this, but this may not happen for years under the appeals process, because that's even before the trial begins.
Yes. And
The appeal has to be taken up to
Yes.
determine if the trial is going to be
yes.
public or not.
Yes. There is also the matter in footnote 3 in the bind over, where the judge alludes to the fact that it is still an open question what the mental capacity of the juvenile was at the time of the alleged commission of the acts. So as many will know, there are times when there's competency to stand trial, which is different from whether you were competent at the time you may have committed an act. Then there was competency for the bind over. I'm simply saying that as a practical matter, it's going to be a long journey, but we are committed to being there each and every step of the way. And what I will also tell you is, I don't mean to repeat myself other than to say, and with great care to understanding that this individual is entitled to a fair trial, I don't want to comment on the evidence other than to say, in that public bind over, which you can read if you haven't had a chance, you will see there are already some dynamics in there that are now public. One of the most, again, simply for our purposes, not the court's trial purposes, but for our purposes, the judge essentially made rulings during the bind over that aspects of the child protective case had to become public in order to adjudicate the bind over. And so what you have is now a matter of public record that there were 16 placements in 17 years. And the questions that get raised about what about that. So we already are building We are already building a factual record here.
Mhm.
So I just want to assure, even though at times we have to wait, there are times when I'm still building the database, okay? So.
So thank you for that,
And
Representative.
he
England.
may
Did you wanna
still,
respond?
he may still plead too.
Yes, and again, absolutely, Representative, and that's, again, I will just say, I don't want to comment on that, but you're absolutely right. At any moment, there could be a plea.
Representative Lee, we're discussing the motion. Or any comments about moving this to the top of the work plan? Should we move forward with this motion that Senator Garrett has put in front of us?
I don't want to be glib about this, but we can change our work plan at any one of our meetings. And so to me, it doesn't make a fundamental difference whether we prioritize it or don't prioritize it. We can change our minds later. And so I'll be supportive of the motion because this is an important issue.
Thank you. Representative Mastracchio, did you have anything? Are there any other comments? So it would seem to me then that the committee is willing to amend the motion. Senator Garrett has already made it clear she's willing to amend the motion, that this would be the priority for OPEGA in their work plan. And we'll look at that and we'll have a scoping conversation and we'll vote on the scope of this in due process. But the motion before us is to direct OPEGA to do a full evaluation of this case and any ancillary issues, including mandatory reporting in homeschool settings or other. That is the motion. Any further discussion of the motion by the committee? Is the committee ready for the question? All those in favor, please indicate in usual manner. All those opposed? Senator Dusan, did you vote?
I'm looking for the raise hand button.
Okay. You may raise your, there you are. You may also raise your hand.
Okay.
So it is unanimous of those present and voting. Absent members will have until Friday at noon to cast their vote in absentia. Thank you, Senator Timberlake. Turning now to a request from our other colleague, Senator Brad Farron. At tab 4, the chair will invite Senator Farron to the table to present the matter and entertain any questions from the committee. Director, you may as well stay put so that you don't have to go back and forth, just
Thank
in
you, sir.
case you have a comment to make on what Senator Farron put in front of us, or the committee will ask of you. So we'll just leave you there. And welcome, Senator Farron.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, colleagues. After this last discussion, and we don't try to minimize any of the things that are brought
Yeah.
forward, but this one seems a little different than the last topic. But I'd like to read this into the record.
Mhm.
Dear Senator Hickman, Representative Masario, and fellow members of the Government Oversight Committee, pursuant to the Government Oversight Committee authority to direct reviews by the Office of Program Evaluation and Government Accountability, I respectfully request the committee consider initiating an investigation into the development, financing, oversight, and contractual arrangements associated with the Maine International Cold Storage Facility located on the Maine Port Authority in Portland. Over the past year and a half, numerous Maine contractors and subcontractors have reported they remain unpaid for work performed on the project, with claims totaling millions of dollars. Several businesses have stated they completed contracted work in good faith and paid their employees and suppliers, yet they have been unable to secure payment themselves. Concerns regarding the availability of lien rights and other protections typically afforded to contractors on private construction projects have come forward. The Maine International Cold Storage Facilities was developed as an economic development project intended to support Maine seafood, agricultural, and food export industries. The project involved the participation of the Maine Port Authority through a long-term lease arrangement and use of publicly controlled waterfront property. As such, the circumstances surrounding the project raise important questions regarding public accountability, risk allocation, oversight responsibilities, and the adequacy of protections afforded to Maine businesses that participated in its construction. Given the significant public interest involved, I believe an OPEGA review should, at a minimum, examine, 1, the role of the Port Authority and any other state entities in the planning, financing, approval, and oversight of the project. 2, the contractual and financial structure of the development. 3, whether adequate safeguards were in place to protect main contractors and subcontractors from non-payment. 4, the legal and policy implications of locating privately developed projects on state-owned property and whether current law creates gaps in contractor protections. 5, any lessons learned that may inform future public-private development projects involving state-owned land or public authorities. And 6, whether legislative or administrative changes are warranted to prevent similar situations from occurring in the future. The allegations that Maine businesses may be owed substantial sums for completed work are deeply concerning. Equally concerning is the possibility that current statutes may leave contractors without meaningful recourse when projects encounter either financial difficulties or inter-party disputes. If such gaps exist, the legislature has an obligation to understand them and determine whether reforms are necessary. An independent review by OPEGA would provide lawmakers and the public with a comprehensive understanding of the facts surrounding this matter and help ensure future economic development projects are structured in a manner that protects both taxpayers and Maine businesses. Due to this situation, future development of public-private projects now seem to be in jeopardy. Thank you for your consideration of this request. I respectfully ask that the Government Oversight Committee place this matter on a future agenda for discussion and consideration. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Farron. I'll just repeat what you said. Government oversight is broad. And we have to prioritize, but every single issue that comes before us presented by a lawmaker is important for us to consider whether we have the resources to direct OPEGA to do it or not. So I just want to make that clear. The questions that you are asking for review on in this letter are matters of public policy and the accountability of our money. And so these are not small issues either, even though they don't involve death of a child. The chair recognizes Representative Stracchio.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator, you're on the Transportation Committee.
Correct.
So is the Transportation Committee, do they have oversight over the Maine Port Authority?
We do.
Has the Transportation Committee weighed in at any point since this became newsworthy?
So 2 things. Not
Can
recently.
you move that over? There.
Not recently, since we adjourned. There was a meeting with the prior.
That would be April.
In April. There was a meeting with the former commissioner when this first started to raise as an issue with the chairs and leads as a conversation, trying to understand the process. Because we were getting calls from contractors and understanding the developer, a multinational company that hired a general contractor from the Midwest who subcontracted to Maine, right? Trying to understand the dynamics. And basically what we were told was that, the state provided the land, and because it was on state land, the contractors could not lien the property because of tort law, right? So they were left to handle it out but we're partners in it. So basically we were told the state doesn't really have a lot of skin in the game other than they had the property and it's going to go through the court process. So what I can tell you, Madam Chair, that I do know several of the smaller contractors have been paid out since I submitted this. They were not paid for their damages or their lost time or interest or anything like that. It was basically settle up and go away. There are still 2 very large pieces that are out there that there is a lawsuit. They finally had to sue the general contractor and the developer. I don't know where the state of Maine fits into that lawsuit. I shared this letter with the commissioner of DOT, and he is preparing a response for the committee because transportation chairs have not picked this up. So that's why I'm here now.
So I know that you are termed out.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not going to be on the Transportation Committee again. My inclination would be that the new iteration of the Transportation Committee, this might be one of the things that they take up first, since there seem to be a lot of implications around legislation or gaps. And I just wondered how you felt about that, what leverage the legislature might have in helping and beginning to solve the problems.
I'd be curious to the director's comments, but the reason I don't think it falls, in this one particular case, it was the Maine Port Authority. There can be, and it has the opportunity to have other public-private partnerships.
Right.
And so, and don't get me wrong, I believe that public-private partnerships can work. But I think some of the questions that are raised in the letter that typical people that do contract work don't necessarily think of all of those things. So I think with at least teeing it up with this committee to raise those concerns across the board, depending on whether it's marine resources or
Right.
the Maine Turnpike Authority or wherever it is, if they have a public-private partnership, there should be some guardrails. I don't think it was thought all the way through.
So is your thought process that we put this on as an agenda item, invite people to come and talk to us, and then decide at that point, do we make this a priority for whatever committee? Or before we make it into something that I guess I'm kind of, it's so broad,
Mhm.
trying to figure out where we go, what's the most important, but that we need to do something, because you're right. I don't think that people are going to want to do public-private partnerships with us if we're going to renege on stuff. So,
I can tell you, Madam Chair, there are a number of these contractors, you know, that for those that don't know, I mean, that's the other hat I work. I work in the construction field. And there are main contractors that will not bid or be involved in projects like this until there are some solutions because of the way that they were left open on this.
right, and I know in my community, we do a lot of that kind of work, and we wouldn't have a whole lot of people bidding on our stuff if we reneged on
No.
our
So
part of
to
the deal.
answer your
So-
question, I would say, teeing it up, hearing some pieces, and even, I'm not suggesting at all that this moves, you know, to the top of the pile or anything like that, but I think teeing up, even for the next legislature or this next committee.
Exactly.
And there's another message that gets sent. Amber, who is the developer in this whole thing, has been approaching other people about doing more work. And the joke is, hell no, look at what you've done. And so just having this discussion in this committee and having the commissioner explain the process, sometimes spotlights are good disinfectant.
So inviting somebody in to shine a light
Yep,
on what's happened
absolutely.
and what might.
How we don't repeat those same
Okay,
mistakes.
yeah, and that's not a review, that's just us listening. Okay, I am totally in favor of that.
Thank you, Representative. Chair recognizes Senator Tippett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Farren, I just noticed this been 2 months almost since you wrote this letter. Just wanted to see if there was any communication, oversight attempts, or information that's arisen out of your advocacy since then that we should know about in considering this.
Just what I know, Senator, I believe that some of the smaller, like mainline fence, they had one contract, one job of putting up the fence, and they were over a year and a half out before, and you know, a small family-owned business, right? I think that they paid them out. I think there's still two fairly large contracts out there, and just to be clear, there is no disagreement about the quality of the work. I mean, the facility is open and running and down through. This isn't about workmanship or defects. They simply did not pay their bills, right? So I think the number of complaints is less since this letter. I think they have closed out some of them. And second of all, like I said, I did share this with the department. And I believe the commissioner is preparing some data for us to talk about. I had a long conversation, folks. Those that know me, I don't like just, you know, dropping the bomb in. I talked to Commissioner Dowdy about this and had, you know, how do we not repeat these same problems? And so I think it's a good conversation to have.
Thank you. I had a feeling you might have done more work on this.
I mean, I just want to say that the purpose for this Maine International Code storage facility should not go unremarked upon because it was developed as an economic development project intended to support Maine's seafood, agricultural, and food export industries. And anybody who knows me knows that I believe that could be a foundation for, I don't know, an economic renaissance in this state. And so to have something of this import be challenged by, I don't know what else to call this. I'm not going to use a word.
Oh, please.
To be challenged is discouraging. I also think that your questions around the legal and policy implications of locating privately developed projects on state-owned property and whether current law creates gaps in contractor protections is a great question to ask. And I can't imagine that these things don't happen in other states. There may be something to learn about how other states do this. And I certainly want to hear from the director on that. But this isn't just a review of a process that you are asking for. The scope is big, and I think it's important to figure out what went wrong and what protections can be put in place so that if we were to do this again, because in my brain I see, there's a law that passed that actually says that on state-owned property, we may want to develop with public-private contracts a way to produce more food to feed more people in more communities that don't have it. This is about exports, but that doesn't mean something like this could not also be around attracting a kind of a culinary tourist location somewhere in some remote part of the state. You can't just build that out of a thought. So who would want to do that if in fact this is the precedent that they'd be working under? Senator Timberlake?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And you said a lot of what I was going to say and I thank you, Senator Farron, for bringing this forward because I think, the state of Maine, let's face it, owns a lot of prime real estate throughout the state of Maine. And I think it's going to be important if the state of Maine's economic development is going to move forward, that they're going to have a lot of public-private intermingling and investment. And if I was one of these contractors that was owed a couple $1 million still, or even one of these contractors like Mainline Fence who got paid what they were supposed to for the job, but never got paid any interest because they still had to pay for the fence. They still had to do everything, install it, and didn't get paid for any of the extras that they had to go through to collect it. I don't even think that's right. Why would you even want to bid on a project ever again in the state of Maine? And why would you ever want to go forward? So I think it's something that I think it's very important that this gets in the queue and gets looked at and we have a discussion over, because if you ain't careful, you're going to get the reputation of, yeah, we're not doing business with them because we got no way of getting our money back if things go south. And so I'll be supporting, or I'll even put the motion forward to add this to the queue. And we take a look at what we can do to make sure that these public-private partnerships move forward. So.
Thank you, Senator. Any questions directly for Senator Farron from the committee about this? Again, thank you very much, Senator Farron, for bringing this to our attention. I'll invite you to come back to your seat on the committee so you can be a part of our discussion about what to do. But before that, Director, do you have any thoughts and opinions on what you have seen here?
Thank you, Senator. In my committee facilitator hat, I reached out to the government relations contact at Transportation just to say, you might want to tune in today, and then just be aware that it is always possible. I don't speak for the committee, but there might be an invitation coming down the pike. So it does seem like that's lining up. I guess my gentle suggestion would be that what was discussed is an invitation be extended to the commissioner or appropriate designees or both to come to the September meeting and just sort of discuss this case. And then there is good potential for, I think what was described is how is this going to work in the future? It can be both there may be elements of what happened, or maybe that's been sort of the dust has settled, but then the program evaluation piece is, how should this or could this or would this be working in the future?
Senator Farron.
The one thing that's perfect. I think that's great starting. And based upon that feedback, I just asked the committee members just to consider possibly, we may at some point want to invite Commissioner Duguay to talk about the importance of these public-private partnerships as we're doing economic development in the state of Maine. I have not talked to the commissioner about that, but I'd be interested in his perspective as well from an economic development standpoint, the role that these agreements can play in the future.
Thank you, Senator Farron. And so if we were to go into a chairs meeting and discuss a future agenda outside of directing a review today, which I'm not suggesting we don't do, but if we were to invite people to sit in front of us to explain what has happened so far, who would you like to see invited other than the commissioner?
I think Commissioner Duguay would be a good one, just if we're trying to understand the process and how it relates to other development. I'd love to say that you bring Amber and the general contractor, invite them forward, but they're not going to accept that because there is a lawsuit.
Yeah.
So I'd love to invite them.
And Director, who are you referring to when you said you reached out to?
Forgive me, it's the legislative liaison for the Department of Transportation, and I have it here. But it is the person who is the official contact.
Understood.
Yeah.
Understood.
And that contact went through because right afterwards was when the commissioner asked if he could get a copy of the letter. Okay, so
We're all doing our part.
Chair recognizes Representative Stover.
Also procurement, because I mean, it doesn't matter what department. I had a constituent complaint recently for a boat captain who relies on payment to be able to do ocean research. And the payment is not timely. It doesn't process. So procurement is a question in this for me.
It's on our list, Representative. We've already directed that review and it's forthcoming.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Chair recognizes Senator Dusan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to add an element in the event that we go forward with a request for review that we include. I wanted to answer, I thought that was a very good question you just posed. Whom else might we check in with? I would request that we consider checking in with the city of Portland. This is an incredibly large project with a highly valuable footprint in a very highly valuable economic development area of our state. And I know that the city was involved in monitoring a lot of the negotiations and added elements to the discussion, like trying to make sure the folks who are going forward with the project, our own state, engaged local workers, paid attention to impact on local parking, on availability of procurement through local businesses, and engagement of organized labor where there were parts of the project that would have involved steel workers or organized labor. So I think that the city's economic development person or the mayor might be a valuable resource for our staff to check in with on those kind of elements as the host city of this very large project.
Thank you, Senator. Chair recognizes Representative Strachan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Dusan, are you suggesting, so if we were as chairs to put this on the agenda for September, not a vote for an evaluation today, but to bring interested parties in, do you have some suggestions other than the mayor of Portland? And if you do, I would get them to the chair, because I think that if they would be interested in coming and telling us what happened, I mean, we got to start somewhere. So that's how I would prefer to start, and hearing from the people who are willing to talk now, who can talk because they're not in litigation.
Chair recognizes.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Senator Dusan, did you want to respond to that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that, yes, I am struggling to remember the current name of the current Economic Development Director, but I would certainly recommend to our staff that we reach out to the city manager, Danielle West, and that what I'm thinking is that the city's engagement as a interested party, but not one who's going to be involved in litigation here or there. They might be a good resource for information or to respond to some questions from Mr. Schleck in preparation for a committee discussion, and we might invite them if they think they have something to add to come to the meeting.
Thank you, Senator. And Senator Farron, I will recognize you next. It looks as though the Commissioner of Transportation serves as the chair of the board of the Maine Port Authority, which is what I was looking at next. And I also see that the other ex officio member of the board, which I can't imagine would be involved in litigation, is the president of the Maine International Trade Center. Does your committee ever engage with that person who provides insight into trade and economic development for the state of Maine?
No, it's been the commissioner, and then this is where I'm gonna be bad. The Port Authority has an executive director, and I'm trying to think. We can find that. But that person, and I'll just say to Senator Doosan's comments, we have not had any conversations with the city, from this standpoint, this legal standpoint. They were not involved in the actual contractual. I understand with the citing in this, but this payment piece between the developer, the GC, and the state of Maine, so I had not reached out to them and had any conversations. Their input would be welcome just if they know through the process, but I specifically hadn't spoken with them because of they didn't have a contractual piece in this one here, but that's okay.
Yeah, I hear you, Senator. It's given what you said more broadly about inviting the commissioner to talk to this committee about economic development generally. We used to have an active commission, the Citizen Trade Policy Commission, which is defunct. It has not had appointments in several years. I used to chair it, where we would talk about some of these issues. But that's about international trade more than it is about economic development for Maine industries that support these particular industries that are both export and import. So there's some overlap there, and that commission did have as an ex officio member the director of the International Trade Policy Center as well. Or I said that wrong, I'm sure. And so I think that we will confer about getting a roster of people to come to talk to us about this issue generally, as well as specific to the problem that you are asking us to consider directing OPEGA to evaluate. Are you adamant that we direct this evaluation in a vote today, or would you like for us to have a really robust September meeting around this if we can get the appropriate players to come and sit in front of us to present? It's up to you. I mean, I just want to know what you want to do, Senator.
Before I answer that, can I ask, when we talk about, and I'd like feedback from my committee members. We talked about having the DOT here, and the Port Authority and, government officials. Is there any interest in having any of the contractors that was impacted so you could hear their side? Or I can get a list to the director. So we could do an invite on that piece. I think that would be good. If that's the case, and I'm gonna look around the horseshoe here, I say we don't necessarily need a vote today.
Correct.
If we're gonna have it on the September, we're gonna make this those invites there, and we wait and see what the outcome of that discussion in September is.
Yes.
Is that?
We can certainly make sure that this committee has done it before. We can do it again on an issue where we conduct, if you will, our own, as a committee, we begin to conduct an evaluation of an issue before we bring our staff in to see if enough can be shared with us as a committee to direct something in our own accord moving forward. But I think bringing this into the light with people who are affected by what's happening now, and people who know what the policy goals of this all are, and with Senator Doosan's suggestion, and I will call on you in 1 second, Senator Doosan, inviting the whole city in, I think it could be a very important meeting for us to have. Perfect. Senator Doosan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have deep respect and admiration for my fellow Senator Farron, and I just wanted to make sure I didn't misspeak it. I was not implying any intended overlooking of a party. I just think that I have a lot of confidence in our chairs and our director And if there was a preliminary reach out to the city, it might be that as a result of that, they don't think they really have anything to add.
Right.
But I just think it'd be valuable to have a reach out to them.
Absolutely. Yes, thank you, Senator. So seeing that we are going to work as chairs with our director to come up with an agenda, we'll get a list of people from Senator Farron that he may wish for us to reach out to invite, and we'll put together an agenda and make it work for us as a committee before directing Opega to do anything more on this matter. Senator Farron.
Not to beat the dead horse, but I do want to go on record saying I believe that public-private partnerships are a good thing.
Absolutely.
And this is not an attempt to spotlight anybody that's done something wrong or whatever down through. This is so that we can continue these very important programs going forward. I just wanted my intent to be known.
Thank you, Senator. Any other thoughts from the committee on this particular agenda item? Seeing none. Director, you are with us. And you have already teased some of your report,
Right.
but you are free to present the rest of it or to review what you've already presented as you wish.
Right. So, thank you, Senator Hickman, Representative Strachey, distinguished members. Very briefly, I'll try to move through this, but not give it any short shrift. At the very last sub-tab of tab 5, should be divided with a pink piece of construction paper, is the list of the meetings for the year. And you're always willing, if this gets emailed, but I realize all the paper that flows around, you're always willing to just yank that right out and take it with you. But if you would, in any event, just pencil in, maybe even halfway with pen, September 16th. It does seem like, subject to the chairs, we're shaping up for going forward with a September 16th meeting. So in addition to the matters just discussed, I wanted to take you back down memory lane to earlier in the year and the Bureau of Motor Vehicles. Members will recall, I'm looking at members on this side of the table because I think there was a request emanating from this side about having a 6-month follow-up with the Bureau of Motor Vehicles to come in and talk about passing rates for driver's license testing divided among immigrants and non-immigrants, or citizens and non-citizens, or however it was characterized at the time. So I had reached out because the 6-month came up in my calendar. And so the motor vehicle folks are on notice, and subject to the chairs, could be available at the September meeting to come and give us sort of an update on that. But again, that's I just wanted to add that as a future coming future attraction. I also then, if I may, want to move to the matter we had discussed at the last meeting, in which there was some discussion based on a request from Representative Eater to see whether this committee is able to direct Opega to do some kind of review of the receipt, management, and distribution by the Maine Community Foundation of certain funds that were collected in connection with the mass casualty shootings in Lewiston in October 2023. I do want to confirm for everyone listening, and the members have it in their binder, and I don't want to make the folks here from Lewiston wait. This becomes a public document once. So Ms. Dustman, I'm going to give you a copy on behalf of your fellows there. That's going to be on our documents page very shortly. They get posted just as soon as we discuss things in the meeting.
It's at the very beginning of tab 5.
Thank you, Senator. It's
very beginning of tab 5.
It's consistent. It is my best hope that it is consistent with the guidance and direction that was given by the committee at our last meeting. Representative Lee will see his question in there about the extent to which, if a portion of the funds, does that get us the rest of the funds? And Senator Farron had the question about the revenue sharing. And then all of us had question to the extent whether this is something, whether there are funds that are sufficiently public that it would give Opega and this committee the ability to get involved at all. I can assure the committee that I have personally been in touch with one of the 2 people who has now sort of taken over, at least on an interim basis, for now Justice Taub, in this sort of chief deputy role. It's being handled at that level, so it's getting It's getting the attention I think that's appropriate. I also don't speak for them, but I did come away with the impression that they're not going to linger on this, that they couldn't have it for today's meeting, but I do expect an answer shortly. I hope to have it for you at the September meeting, and I'll certainly be checking in and following up. But it is certainly something that was received, acknowledged. I've had a conversation. They seem to be understanding what the questions were. They appreciated the clarity with which the questions were framed. And so I am hopeful that we can move to the next step here soon.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee about it? Chair recognizes Representative Lee.
I don't really, well, I have a lot of questions, and there are certainly a lot of questions that are emanating from this. And I've been having a lot of conversations with folks and really trying to dig in. And I wanted to acknowledge and express empathy for the frustration and the difficulty of having those questions answered. I'm someone who's on government oversight and has some experience with this. And I've had a hard time figuring out who to ask the questions of and how to get those questions answered. There's a lot of mud and a lot of unclarity surrounding all of this. The one thing that's very clear to me is that the suffering that continues for those who are directly affected by the Lewiston shooting is incredibly real. And the need for some additional funding to heal that suffering is incredibly real. And I have, again, significant policy questions as to what we have in place right now structurally is sufficient to deal with that. I think that's a policy question for the 133rd legislature. I also have a number of questions and think there's reasonable justification for the frustration and concern people have with how MCF both took in funds and distributed those funds. I don't know if we're the right place to answer those questions. I also have questions of the AG themselves, the people at the AG's office themselves, about how an investigation into those matters were handled. And so, again, I know it's an open question and we have a letter requesting answers to what authority and jurisdiction we have to look into those questions. But one way or the other, I think someone and all of us as a legislature need to be pursuing answers to those questions.
Thank you, Representative Lee. The chair agrees across the board and could not have stated it any better, especially when we see and feel the palpable frustration of those who feel cheated by however this was administered. That's real. And there may be a solution that the legislature can come up with to deal with that very direct need for financial healing in the next legislature. Chair recognizes Senator Timberlake.
I thank you, Mr. Chair, and I thank you, Representative Lee, for your words. And I missed part of this because out of the room for a second, but I go back to a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, the good senator from Lewiston, Peggy Rotundo, came to me and we tried to figure out a way that, and I think the chair beside me, we'd had a conversation about whether we had jurisdiction over this or not. And we determined at that time that it was a gray territory. And I agree that we need financial solution to the problem, but I think some of the financial solution should go back to where all the money was handed out and where all that money went and the recovery of that money, because I think some of that money may not have gone where it was supposed to go. And I get sick of the state taking money and throwing good money away after bad money and just keep saying, well, we'll just make it up. The state can make it up. I think the people who spend it improperly should be the ones who make this up. I don't think we should ask the state to send some more money. And I think we should go after the money that was inappropriately allocated. I think this needs to be somehow, the Attorney General's office has to give us a ruling of what they can do, what they can't. Doesn't seem so it should take as long as it takes, but as we've talked about earlier today, the wheels of government move very slowly. And it's very, very frustrating, especially when you're these people that have lived through a living hell for the last, 2 years, a year and a half, what, I can't even remember what it is now in my head.
Almost 3.
Almost 3 now. And they had all sorts of, when this happened, even my own operation, we helped donate money to some causes and thought it was going in all the right places. And I'm concerned of even where that money went. So it's something that I think is serious, and I think it's something that needs to figure out a solution to it. I don't know as I have it today, but I want us to get the money that was put out there back. I mean, it was given to different organizations. We've all seen the list. And if they didn't put it in the right places and do what it was supposed to do, then that's where that money ought to come from, not necessarily more out of the taxpayer's pocket.
Thank you, Senator. Chair recognizes Representative Perkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I originally raised my hand because I have a question for the director, but after having listened to Senator Timberlake, I'd like to add this comment is that I completely agree with 100% of what he just said. And I had a family member of a victim of that. It was a crime. I'm not going to call it tragedy. It was a crime against these families. They said to me that having to fight to get this fixed is just re-victimizing us. And I think that's how we have to look at it. And we're either looking for a reason to investigate what happened here, make this right, or we're looking for a reason not to investigate it. When you have that gray area, I think we need to side on the side of not re-victimizing these people. But I 100% agree with what Senator Timberlake said. But as to my question for the director, I just want to make sure I'm clear. Did you say we're going to have an answer for that from the Attorney General's by the next meeting, according to them? And in your opinion, is that consistent with how long it normally takes to get an opinion from that office?
I thank you, Representative. I don't have metrics for you on what their workload is and how typically quickly. I've always, in the past, when I've dealt at the Chief Deputy Attorney General level, that the answers come promptly. I got the impression from this person who is now working at that level, who has been brought back from retirement, especially to fill in. As you know, the Senate and the governor elevated someone to the law court who used to have that role and was a very reliable person to answer questions like this. I have confidence based on that person's reputation that they're going to get that for us. I am optimistic. Can I promise it? Of course, I'm not the Attorney General, but I did come away with the impression that it couldn't be for this meeting, but there was a desire not to sit on it and to move it forward.
Thank you. Thank you. Chair recognizes Representative Stracchio.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Do you think it'd be possible to give them a call, reiterate that we absolutely would like them to be at the next meeting? Because I actually don't think it's sufficient to just have a letter. I guess I'd like to be able to follow up.
I'd be happy to do that.
Representative Lee.
For whoever's listening from the AG's office, I'll at least express my considerable frustration with them if they do not have a response to these questions and do not appear at the next meeting.
Okay. Which is, for the record, September 16th, for those who are listening.
It could be a long meeting, and that's okay. And that's okay. We should prepare for a long meeting on the 16th of September if in fact the agenda as it's being discussed in front of the world materializes in such a way that we can have a robust meeting. So we'll have a morning and an afternoon session. That's the plan. It's subject to change based upon the availability of all those who we will be reaching out to, but that is the intent right now for anyone listening. Director.
Thank you. Just 2 more items. The Chelsea bind over we've talked about. Again, I know how many things you have to deal with on any given basis. I know it's a tough read. If you haven't had a chance, it was emailed to you and you're welcome to take it out of the binder. Not just because of all the gory details, but it is a very, and I'm not commenting on the decision or the merits of the decision, but I just want you to show you the process that a judge goes through dealing and trying to balance and weigh a situation like this and the facts. And it's going to inform you as you start to think about Chelsea and what went on with 16 placements in 17 years. Forgive me if I have that, just if it's 17 and 16 or 16 and 17, but there are some tough issues there about foster placement and that process. And we heard about some of that during Frontline Perspectives, and I think it's going to come back. So it's just, we're building the blocks of our understanding. So if you haven't had a chance, and I acknowledge it's pretty searing, at least the facts, it's worth part of the process. Just the last thing then, not the least thing, but I did want to acknowledge for everyone, because it's something else that the committee can decide what, if anything, further you want to do now or in the future. But I will say, we did get a letter back from Commissioner Randall Liberty, which is in the member binders. It's after the bind over decision. It's
Mhm.
this sort of aqua blue.
It's right before the pink.
Yeah. And I will defer to the chair if the chair wanted to read this into the record, or the chair would like me to read it into the record. But it may be the case that the senator or someone wants to know what it says for those who are listening.
Yes.
I'll
Thank
stop
you.
right there.
Thank you, Director. So we are in receipt of a response to the questions that the chairs asked of the commissioner at our June 17th meeting. The response from Commissioner Randall A. Liberty is as follows. Dear Senator Hickman and Representative Mastracchio, I write in response to the two follow-up questions that the Government Oversight Committee sent to the Maine Department of Corrections on July 6, 2026, after I appeared before the Government Oversight Committee on June 17th. In the follow-up letter, the committee asked, quote, since the enactment of 34A MRS Section 3031, subsection 10, or any provision of Public Law 2021, Chapter 263, how many trans men, persons assigned of a gender of female at birth but who identify as men, have been resident in a Maine correctional facility or section or unit limited to male inmates? For each also, the dates and what were the terms of that housing, general population, administrative segregation, or other. The committee's second question was the same as the first, but for trans women. The questions pertain to Maine correctional facilities. Maine DOC is only responding for Maine DOC facilities, not county jails, which do not fall under MDOC's control. Since 2021, 9 transgender women and or non-binary persons who were assigned male at birth have been housed at some point at the women's facilities at the Maine Correctional Center or the Southern Maine Women's Reentry Center. Since 2021, 2 transgender men and or non-binary persons who were assigned female at birth have been housed at some point at a men's facility. We declined to provide specific date ranges, including dates reflecting present housing or specific units, out of concern for the privacy and safety of residents and to ensure compliance with 34A MRS Section 1216, which makes information on specific residents confidential, absent a release or court order or other inapplicable circumstances. That is our response from the Department of Corrections. Director.
And thank you, Senator. And I did want to provide, it's not in your binders. It's the ink is now dry, but it's a pretty fresh document. Just recently, I've been sort of monitoring. As an old court clerk, I just keep an eye on the dockets in federal court and otherwise. But I can tell you that Attorney Dill, who was here, who represents the plaintiffs in
Yes.
the litigation that's going on in federal court, has now filed very recently for a preliminary injunction to enjoin the Department of Corrections on a constitutional basis, alleging that these are constitutional violations. The context here being the housing situation and who's being exposed to whom and whether there are threats and whether that's being taken care of. And then the constitutional dimensions about that, which I will not do justice to. But I did only offer it for your consideration as, and Representative Lee, again, not to pick on Representative Lee, but as an attorney, when someone's moving for a preliminary injunction, things are heating up in the court in a way that I think, as a practical matter, what I would gently suggest to the committee is maybe that can continue to play and is going to come to a head relatively sooner than we could get involved, and then an appeal process. And some of that stuff about the constitutional dimensions of various statuses and how that they relate to each other, I think we're going to know more soon from the court process. I'm not the decider on that, but I did want to just sort of put that out there.
I appreciate that, Director. Can you just summarize the injunction? What is being requested?
So basically, it's a way for the court to basically enjoin what they allege is happening, that they would be entitled, that they are likely to succeed on the merits of their eventual lawsuit, and that there are ongoing constitutional violations of the parties' rights. And therefore, the court should jump in right now and say, halt.
Got it. Any questions from the committee about that update? Thank you, Director, for keeping an eye on all of the things that come before this committee. It's a lot. And I think that this committee will have to have another discussion again about how much work we can actually get done with the staff that currently exists in Opega and or any other public-private contract that we may have to have so that we can get the work done that really needs to get done. Because the one thing that is very clear from the people of the state of Maine right now is that there needs to be a reckoning, if you will, for the money that we spend on programs and agencies and contracts and procurement. That's what people want from us. And we are the committee to direct our partners in Opega to get to the bottom of all of it. And so there's a lot of work to do, and the people of Maine need us to do it. It's as simple as that. Anything else anyone wants to talk about today? Chair recognizes Senator Tippin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just on that note, I just wasn't able to be here for that meeting and wanted to say how much I appreciated the committee's actions on forwarding that investigation. I think it was unfortunate that the bill addressing that did not get funding, and I'm glad that we're taking that on because it's an incredibly important issue.
It's quite important. Chair recognizes Senator Doosan.
I'm sorry, I forgot to lower my hand, Mr. Chair.
Okay, no worries. Appreciate that very much. Anything else from the committee? Well, I hope everyone enjoys these warm summer days. It's not over yet. It feels like summer is ending, but it's really not. It's just the middle of August.
Big apples.
It's complete okra and blueberries and everything else. Without objection, Joint Legislative Committee on Government Oversight